What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to just quickly give my first impressions on Battlefield 2042's all-out warfare portion of the game after getting some early access to play it before the game launched. I have to give a massive thank you to EA for inviting me along to the early play session. We were invited to 3 different days of playing, 1 day for all-out warfare, 1 day for Hazard Zone, and 1 day for Portal, all of which were about 4 or 5 hours worth of playtime in each of those modes. Now, I will be covering the same sort of video but for Hazard Zone and Portal as well, so be sure to keep your eyes peeled for those videos in the next couple of days, and there is plenty of other content on the way as well. Some tips and tricks videos, some discussions about certain elements of the game, and obviously a hell of a lot of extra stuff throughout the rest of 2021 and beyond. So if you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe with those notifications on so that you don't miss out on any of that upcoming content. So anyway, getting into my first impressions for All Out Warfare, and first of all I'll detail what we actually got to play in the first play session. We were given 2 hours of playtime in Breakthrough first up, playing on Discarded, Hourglass, Manifest and Renewal, and then after that we had a quick break before heading into 2 hours of Conquest, playing on Discarded, Hourglass, Orbital and Kaleidoscope. So we got to play every map in the game other than Breakaway, and yeah, we got 2 hours between each of those 2 game modes. Now, we also had every single item unlocked already so that we could experience all of them, as well as all of the specialists as well, and we were of course playing on PC. Half of this gameplay was on controller and the other half was on keyboard and mouse. Just keep in mind that it might look kinda shitty because I was on low settings at 1080p just to make sure that my recordings ran smoothly, so the game will look a little bit better than this on next gen consoles, and if you have a high-end PC it'll look better than this as well. So I've got a few topics that I wanted to quickly cover in this video, with those being the modes, the maps, the specialists, and just the overall performance and feel of the game as well. So I'll do my best to cover all of those in as short of a time as possible, since there's so much content for you guys to get through this week. Now, in terms of the game modes, obviously we only had Conquest in the beta, so Breakthrough was a nice change up, and I do often prefer Breakthrough anyway, so I was very keen to get stuck into it. It definitely felt a lot more chaotic, as you would expect. One thing that people seemed to have a problem with in the beta was that people were a little bit too spread out and the map seemed a little bit too big, but obviously in Breakthrough everyone is kind of crammed in together, so it was definitely chaotic at the worst of times. I think for me, Renewal was my favourite map on Breakthrough. It starts out in the desert area and the attacking team has to sort of push their way across the desert to try and get into the sort of lush green area behind the wall, and that desert section was awesome. It's really open, but there's still plenty of cover behind rocks and little valleys and stuff, and it felt like a really solid area of the map to fight over. Now, unfortunately, we actually never once got inside the wall because the defending team was absolutely dominant in both games. The first game I was on defense and we stopped it in the first phase, and then the second game I was on offense and we got smacked, so that kind of leads me to my next point. I think in the 2 hours of playing, the attacking team only got past the first phase once, which was when we were attacking on Manifest, and so either it was just a crazy coincidence or more likely the defending team is just a little bit too OP in this game mode. It felt the same on every map that we played, so I think DICE will need to do some sort of balancing, maybe in regards to like less vehicles for the defending team or longer respawn timers or something. It definitely felt impossible to win as the attackers. That said, I still really enjoyed Breakthrough quite a bit. I think if they do balance it out, it's going to be so much fun to play, and I think for those who felt Conquest was a little bit too slow, this is definitely going to be the mode for you, because yeah, it was just non-stop chaos with 128 players, and I'm pretty sure it will be just as chaotic with 64 players. Now, as for the Conquest section, I've kind of gone off Conquest in recent Battlefield games, but holy shit did I have a lot of fun in Conquest. Like I said, we played on Hourglass, Discarded, Kaleidoscope and Orbital, and all of the maps played really well in my opinion. Discarded and Kaleidoscope are the 2 smallest maps in the game, I believe, and they felt amazing in Conquest. Discarded really took me by surprise how much I enjoyed it, and Kaleidoscope was a heap of fun too. They both felt really action-packed and they were a lot faster paced than Orbital was in the beta. I think the game seemed to flow a lot better than it did in the beta for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but yeah, I just felt like I enjoyed myself a lot more in these maps and even on Orbital as well. So whether they've changed anything, I'm not too sure as of right now, but I really enjoyed Conquest quite a bit, which to be honest, I actually wasn't really expecting to. Now, moving on to the maps, I've obviously covered a few of these already in the last section, but what I will say is that they all look and feel amazing. I really don't have any issues with any of them, at least as of right now, although obviously we only got a couple of games on each map, and so I've hardly experienced everything that there is to experience as of right now. Hourglass was definitely enormous. I think it played a little bit better than I expected it to, but I definitely think it was the slowest of the 4 maps in Conquest. But with that being said, I think one thing that is great about the new cluster system in the game is that you genuinely can spend a huge amount of time at just one sector and still feel like you're having a small game of Conquest within that sector. There was almost an entire game where I was actually just at the stadium part of the map in Conquest. I think it's A1, A2 and A3 over there, and there was essentially just a constant tug of war going on between those three flags, and it was a heap of fun despite only being over in the far corner of the map. I think in Conquest we're all just kind of used to jumping between most of the flags and still kind of experiencing like the majority of the map in each game, but I think on maps like Hourglass and probably Breakaway too, it feels like we will eventually just get used to hanging out in like one or two of the say 5 or more sectors of the map, and just kind of sticking to those 2 areas and still having a ton of action. So as much as Orbital felt a little bit big at times in the beta, I think the size of the maps is actually not too much of an issue, especially once we get used to it. But again, obviously with such little playtime as of right now, the jury is still out on that one. Overall though, I really enjoyed all of the maps in the game, and until I get a bit more playtime, I'm not too sure if I have any issues with them as of right now. Now moving on to the specialists, and this is obviously the most controversial aspect of the game so far. It's been the biggest talking point since the beta, and it seems to be the most polarizing aspect of the game. You guys will know that I really didn't like the specialist system all that much in the beta. I felt like it made you a bit of a one-man army at times and took away from the team play, but honestly, at least just in these sessions anyway, I think I am actually okay with it now. I do still think the class system that we know and love would have been a better choice in all honesty. If it ain't broke, then don't fix it, and if I did have my own way, then I think I would still revert to the class system, but I honestly think that the specialist system felt pretty fine now that we have all 10 to choose from, as well as the fact that obviously I just kind of knew what to expect this time around. In the beta there was obviously no team play at all, but I think that was more of a beta thing than anything. No one really ever cares about team play in the beta because it is just that, a beta. But in the sessions this week there was definitely a lot more reviving going on, more ammo crates, a really solid variety of specialists being chosen, and yeah, overall I think my opinion on it has really changed quite a bit now that we have actually been able to experience the whole thing. Now with that being said, I will say I still think Jisoo is going to be a little bit OP. The wall hack ability is mostly just annoying rather than being OP, but her trait is actually kind of cooked if I'm honest. I'm not too sure if I'll be able to find the clip because there was like 4 or 5 hours of gameplay to go through, but if I can find the clip I'll show it on screen. There was one moment that I could not for the life of me see a guy, but he shot me once and then I just immediately snapped to him and absolutely murked him. I think we might have actually traded in the end, but yeah, I had no business killing this dude because I just couldn't even see him, but because he was highlighted in red I just immediately saw where he was, all because he shot me first. I definitely think she's going to be heavily abused and heavily disliked in the community for quite a while, and I dare say she'll be getting balanced already because yeah, I don't think she was like super OP and just the clear best in the game. Plenty of others were pretty good too, but she was more so just annoying, which is never a good thing. There was also a bug earlier on where Dozer was invincible even from behind when he had his shield out, and that was being abused by pretty much all the bad players in the playtest who just couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat, so that got pretty annoying. I was in a squad with Silk and Rada and we were getting pretty frustrated by that, but it seemed to be fixed once they reset the servers, so I'm not too sure what the go was there. Once it was fixed, Dozer seemed pretty balanced, but yeah, when he was invincible that was obviously not a good thing. Outside of those two, however, I honestly felt like the specialists were pretty balanced for the most part. There weren't 100 McKays running around, and as far as I know they slightly actually nerfed McKay judging by what Silk was telling us, and yeah, I think the balancing seemed pretty decent so far other than Jisoo, but again, it is very early to tell, so I'm sure my opinion will change in a few weeks. Now, as for the visibility issue, it was honestly completely fixed, at least for me anyway. For one, there are a heap of skins in the game, and I'll just quickly show you guys on screen all of the options for a few characters here. Everyone looked different, and I really can't remember seeing too many times where I was just coming across like 5 of the same character in the same skin. It actually seemed pretty diverse straight away. On top of that, the enemy team seemed to have sort of like a really dark tint. They almost just looked to be all wearing black skins, and it made them stand out quite a bit more. And the UI was definitely a little bit better as well, to where I just actually never felt like I couldn't tell who was who. In fact, I think in the 4 hours of playing these modes, not once did I actually come across an enemy that I thought was a teammate or vice versa. Overall, I'd say I feel much better now about the specialist system. Again, if I had it my way, I think I would still love the typical class system, but it honestly felt much better to me once we had all 10, and I'm interested to see what the rest of the community thinks once the game has been out for a while. Now, in terms of just the overall performance of the game and the overall feeling, it honestly felt really good compared to the beta. There really weren't any bugs that I came across, at least not memorable ones anyway, so I'm sure there were maybe some smaller ones in there, but there's literally nothing I can think of that stood out as being an issue or a constant bug or anything. The build seemed to run pretty smoothly, and this was the exact build that you guys will be playing now. It wasn't a different build at all. There were also none of those like visual issues like in the beta where the screen went all weird and the sky seemed to have like texture popping issues or anything like that. Can't remember really having any visual bugs at all, to be honest, so that was a really big improvement from the beta, because for me that was one of the main main issues that I came across. In terms of the overall performance, it definitely seemed much more optimized than the beta 2. I'm not really going to comment too much on that simply because I was at 1080p on low settings, and I'm generally not a PC guy, so I don't really feel like my opinion on the performance is valid considering I mostly play on Xbox. It felt much better to me, but I also think I'd go and watch some of the PC guys if you want a proper opinion on that, mostly because I'm just not nearly as informed about that stuff as most of the PC players. The movement was noticeably nerfed, but not too bad by any means. The sliding and stuff was definitely a little bit slower and sort of toned down, but the movement still felt good in my opinion. And then I'd say the same thing for the gunplay really. I think they slightly nerfed it overall by adding a little bit of recoil to most of the weapons, but again, the gunplay still felt good in my opinion, and hey, if they want to add a bit more of a skill gap, then I'm fine with that. I thought it felt perfect in the beta and wasn't in need of any changes, but the new gunplay still felt really good to me. That is pretty much it though guys in terms of my first impressions. Obviously it is incredibly hard to judge a game of this scale in 4 hours of playtime and a 10-minute video, so keep in mind that my opinion will definitely change after like 100 hours or so, and I'll likely do a proper review of the game after a few months once I have experienced it all properly. But for my first impressions, this is a reasonably detailed outline of what I've experienced so far. Like I said, I've got the same sort of video going up soon for both Hazard Zone and Portal. I wanted to separate them all just because they're all so different, and otherwise the video will be 30 minutes long. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for those ones, as well as plenty more content on top of that. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. If you guys want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.